Chapter 28. The Fall That Remembers Them. The collapse was not a clean break. It didn't open like the balcony above. It folded. The stone beneath Elias, Jonah, and Mara bent inward as if the lower city decided to curl itself into a fist, dragging them all down in one convulsive motion. Mara grabbed Elias's arm. Elias gripped Jonah's hand. Jonah held on with every ounce of strength he had left. For one suspended breath, they were still together. Then the floor gave way completely, and they fell through the heart of the city. There was no wind, no scream, no sensation of gravity. Only motion, endless, shifting motion, as the architecture around them rearranged itself at impossible speed. Corridors folded into each other like collapsing lungs. Rooms rotated and locked into new positions. Floors slid past like pages of a flipping book, each one revealing a different memory, a different version of space, a different lost fragment of identities someone had left behind. Elias tightened his grip on Jonah's wrist. "Hold on," Jonah tried, but the city had other plans. Shapes moved between them. Thin, translucent, almost human, echoed Jonah's. Flickering fragments, versions of him that had never escaped the lower levels and still wandered aimlessly. They pressed against Elias's arms and Jonah's shoulders, not solid enough to push him away, yet real enough to interfere. Mara's voice rose somewhere to Elias's left. "Don't lose him. Don't let it break your contact." Her voice bent sideways, drawn into the shifting geometry, until it sounded like three overlapping voices speaking in different directions. Jonah's fingers slipped. "Elias." "Jonah, no." Their hands tore apart. The city swallowed Jonah into a rotating corridor that sealed itself instantly, eliminating every trace of him. Only the echo of his breath remained, sharp, cut short, replaced by the grinding of stone and metal. Elias slammed onto solid ground. Not a floor, a memory, a cold, damp surface that smelled faintly of bleach, old rain, and something metallic. His ribs screamed as he pushed himself up. His vision blurred, then steadied. He was in an alley. A narrow passage with brick walls so tall the sky above looked like a thin, trembling line. The ground was wet, littered with scraps of paper that drifted in no wind at all. A single lamp flickered overhead, coughing out light that illuminated the puddles in uneven strokes. Elias's pulse stuttered. He knew this place. Not from a memory he had lived, from a memory he had cataloged. The photograph. The first one. The one he found in the archive. The one that showed a narrow street lit by a trembling lamp, with a figure standing half in shadow, half in light. He turned slowly. He wasn't alone. A silhouette stood at the far end of the alley, still patient, as though waiting for the scene to begin. The shadows clung to it unnaturally, refusing to release the edges of its form. Not Jonah, not the entity, something else, something that remembered him. Elias stepped backward instinctively, breath catching in his throat. "Mara," he called. "Jonah?" His voice hit the walls and died instantly, absorbed without echo. He wasn't in the lower city anymore. He was in a place the city had built specifically for him. The silhouette took one step forward. Just one. That was all it needed. The light above him flickered and steadied, revealing, just for an instant, the curve of a shoulder, the tilt of a head, the suggestion of a face that was not a face at all. Elias whispered, "You're the one that saw me first." The figure did not move. It didn't need to. Words formed behind Elias, not spoken aloud, but pressed into the air, into the pavement, into the marrow of the place. "This is where you enter. This is where you begin. This is where you return." The alley blurred at the edges, drifting between versions of itself. Elias steadied himself. "Where's Jonah?" The silhouette lifted its head, though its features remained hidden. Then it pointed behind him. Elias turned, and saw a second alley branching from the first, one he was certain hadn't existed a moment earlier. This one was darker, its entrance marked by a faint, trembling glow pulsating the air like a heartbeat. A sound drifted from within, thin, distant, almost fragile. Jonah's voice. "Elias." Elias took a step toward it. The silhouette moved sharply, blocking his path. It didn't touch him. It didn't need to. The air between them tightened, stretching with a pressure that made his eyes water. It was a warning, a barrier, A statement. Elias whispered through clenched teeth. Let me go to him. A ripple of something like emotion broke through the silence. Frustration, recognition, hunger, grief. Elias couldn't tell. The silhouette spread its arms slightly, not to threaten him, but to show him something. The walls of the alley shifted. Images appeared, snapshots of memories, moments, faces, versions of himself, versions of Jonah, versions of the city, not sequences, layers, overlapping like transparent slides. Elias staggered back, overwhelmed. Stop. The images sharpened. One stood out. Jonah, younger, terrified, reaching for Elias in a hospital memory as the city spoke Elias's name for the first time. The image melted into another. Jonah, older, desperate, standing in the lower city saying, I'm losing who I am. Elias felt something inside him fracture. The silhouette lowered its arms. The alley stilled. The pressure eased. A voice, barely audible, rose from the street. He is below, but you must go through. Through where? The silhouette stepped backward, dissolving into the dark as if sinking into liquid shadow. The lamp above flickered out completely. The only remaining light now came from the second alley. Jonah's alley, dim, pulsing, alive. Elias inhaled, heart pounding. He stepped toward the darkness. The moment his foot crossed the threshold, the air tightened around him, sealing the entrance behind like a door locking shut. He was alone. Jonah's voice called again, fainter this time, fraying at the edges. Elias, hurry. And Elias walked deeper into the alley where the city had kept his brother waiting. Chapter 29. The corridor that knows his brother. The alley narrowed as Elias walked, its walls pressing closer with each step until they seemed to breathe around him. The dim glow that pulsed at the far end, Jonah's glow or the city's imitation of it, grew no closer, no matter how far Elias advanced. It moved with him, always the same distance ahead, like a mirage unwilling to commit to being real. The ground shifted under his shoes. Wet stone became cracked tile became soft earth became smooth concrete. Each step forced Elias through a different memory of walking. Moments pulled from childhood, from a night he ran, from the days after Jonah disappeared. None of it was literal. All of it was true. The whisper returned, brushing the back of his neck, like a cold breath. Hurry, Jonah's voice, but thinner, pulling apart the edges, as if spoken by someone forgetting the shape of his own mouth. Elias pushed forward. The alley curved left. The walls shimmered, losing their solidity. For a moment, Elias saw faces trapped inside them, smudged, half-formed versions of Jonah at various ages, staring at it with expressions caught between sadness and warning. Then the faces dissolved, replaced by a blank brick that pulsed once and went still. A door appeared on the left wall. Wooden, old, too ordinary for city. Elias slowed. He didn't touch it. The city didn't need touch to open anything. The handle turned by itself. The door swung inward with a soft groan. A room lay beyond, small, lit by a single lamp, with peeling yellow wallpaper and a narrow bed pushed against the wall. A chair sat beside it. A stack of books lay on the floor. And on the bed, Jonah, but not the Jonah from the lower city. A younger Jonah, pale, thin, eyes closed, breathing slowly. Elias's breath left him in a choked exhale. Jonah? The boy didn't move. Elias stepped inside, though every instinct in him screamed to stay away. The air shifted as he crossed the threshold, thickening, settling around him like a held breath. He approached the bed, watching the rise and fall of Jonah's chest. He reached out slowly, hesitant, terrified. His hand passed through Jonah's shoulder, as if through smoke. A memory, a version, not him. A voice whispered behind him, soft and close. He sleeps here. He stays here. He is not the one who called you. Elias turned sharply. The room behind him wasn't the same anymore. The door had vanished. The wallpaper had changed. The bed was gone. The Jonah on the bed was gone. The city had shown him something, then taken it back. A memory Jonah. A version Jonah. A Jonah that never left the hospital or never survived the day Elias ran, or never found the courage to enter the city. He swallowed hard and stepped back out. The alley reformed around him, as if relieved to have him back under its control. The glow ahead intensified. Jonah's voice returned, clearer this time. "Elias, please." He broke into a run. The walls blurred past him, bending inward as if trying to stop him. The ground tilted without warning, then straightened again. Shadows twisted around his ankles, clutching briefly before releasing, like hands that were too weak to hold him. He ran harder. The alley ended abruptly. Elias stopped just short of crashing into the wall. The glow he had been following hovered inches from the surface, pulsing like the last heartbeat of a dying light. The wall itself wasn't brick or stone. It looked like the surface of deep water held upright, trembling gently, reflecting nothing. A membrane, a threshold, a place meant to be crossed. Elias reached out. The surface rippled, then broke. A hand shot through, cold, desperate, grasping at the empty air. Elias staggered backward in shock. The hand groped blindly, shaking with effort, until it found the edge of the membrane and pulled. Jonah emerged. Not an echo, not a memory. Jonah, alive, barely. His face flickered between two versions, the one Elias remembered and the one the city had sculpted in his absence. His eyes struggled to hold shape, pupils blurring into streaks of dark before reforming. His breath came in sharp pulls. When he saw Elias, his expression cracked. Relief, fear, exhaustion tangled into one. "Elias," Jonah gasped. "It's too close." Elias surged forward, grabbing his brother's arms. Jonah's body felt both real and unstable beneath his grip, like something that could disintegrate if held too tightly. "Jonah, listen to me," Elias said. "I'm here. I'm not losing you again." Jonah shook his head violently, eyes flickering. "It brought you because it knows I can't hold much longer." "What can't you hold?" Elias demanded. Jonah's voice cracked. "My name." Something in Elias froze. A sound rolled through the alley, a low, resonant pulse that made the walls tremble. The membrane behind Jonah rippled, bulging outward like something pressing against it from the other side. Jonah gripped Elias's coat with trembling fingers. "It took pieces of it," he whispered. "Too many. I don't know which version is me anymore." Elias tightened his arms around him. "Then we will choose together." Jonah shook his head, terrified. "No, you don't understand. If I let go of the wrong one." The membrane expanded violently. A tall, faceless silhouette pressed against it from within. Elias's breath stopped. The shadow he had seen in the alleys. The shadow from the photograph. The one that had spoken his name before he ever learned to say it back. Jonah screamed, "Elias, run!" The membrane tore open. The shadow stepped through. The alley shook. Elias did not run. He stepped in front of Jonah, ready to face the thing that had known his name longer than he had. The shadow leaned forward and whispered, not to Jonah, but to him, "You are almost ready." The alley darkened. The shadow reached for both of them. The city inhaled, and Elias finally understood. The test wasn't choosing which Jonah survived. The test was deciding whether Elias Ward could survive the truth of who he had been before the city spoke his name. Chapter 30. The name beneath the name. The shadow did not rush them. It unfurled, a slow, deliberate expansion of darkness that slid across the alley floor like oil, pooling around Elias's feet before attracting, as if testing the outline of his presence. Jonah staggered backward until his spine hit the trembling membrane, breath coming in quick, broken gasps. His outline flickered again, sharp, blurred, sharp, like a picture someone kept trying to refocus. Elias stepped forward. He didn't feel brave. He didn't feel ready. He felt seen. The shadow tilted its head, its faceless surface rippling with slow, quiet recognition. Elias felt the memory of his childhood rise uninvited, his own voice echoing from a hospital corridor where the city had spoken his name first. It was the same presence now, only closer, fuller, shaped by the years Elias had spent trying to outrun what he'd already given away. "Why me?" Elias whispered. The shadow replied without sound, pressing its answer directly into the air between them. You answered first. Elias swallowed. I was a child. You were open. Jonah whimpered softly behind him. Elias, don't listen. But it was too late. The city was inside the cracks of his name now, moving through the syllables like breath through a reed. A cold pressure formed against the back of his skull, pushing memories to the surface. Memories he recognized and memories he didn't. Some were too sharp. Others warped beyond recognition, as if the city had stored multiple versions of the same moment and didn't know which one belonged to him. I didn't choose you, Elias said. The shadow's outline shivered. You returned. That is choosing. The alley walls tightened, closing like lungs constricting around them. Jonah grabbed Elias's arm, his voice breaking. Don't let it take the last part. Elias turned slightly toward him. What last part? Jonah shook his head violently. The part of your name you've never used. Elias frowned. Jonah, what are you talking about? Jonah's body flickered sharply, his voice suddenly echoing with two overlapping tones, one older, one younger. You don't know it. You don't know what you left behind. Elias's blood turned cold. He faced the shadow again. What did I leave? The answer rippled through the air like a drop of ink spreading through water. Your first name. Your whole one. The one you had before Elias. The world stopped breathing. Jonah collapsed to his knees, gripping his temples. Don't listen. Elias. This is what it wants. But Elias couldn't speak. He couldn't breathe. A memory surfaced, one he had never questioned. A memory of his mother calling him Elias the first time. He remembered the room, the smell of disinfectant, the way she held him, the way the doctor nodded when she said the name. But he didn't remember her choosing it. He didn't remember the moment before it. He didn't remember any name before Elias. The shadow stepped closer. You were somebody else. Before the city spoke first. Elias staggered backward. No, he whispered. No, I was always... His voice broke, because he knew. Deep down, he'd always known. There were gaps in his childhood he had never questioned. A missing hour at 6, a missing day at 8, a missing season at 9. And then the night the city spoke his name and stole the beginning of it. Mara's voice echoed faintly behind him, distant, muffled, as if coming from another corridor. Elias, listen to me. Don't let the city define the absence. He spun around. Mara was running toward him through the alley, breathless, eyes wide with terror. How did you... Elias began, stunned, but she grabbed his wrist before he could finish. The lower city is forcing your identity to collapse inward, she said urgently. You have to close the circle before it rewrites you completely. The shadow did not react to her presence. It didn't need to. Everything in the alley was built around Elias. Tell me what I'm missing, he said, voice raw. Mara took a trembling breath. There's a name inside you that frightens the city. A version of you it didn't finish rewriting. Elias blinked. I don't understand. Jonah lifted his head, pain in every inch of his expression. Elias, I remember it. The world tightened. Elias knelt beside him. You remember who I was? Jonah nodded weakly. Before the city spoke your name, you told me another one. We were so young. You whispered it to me because you were afraid you'd forget it. Elias's heart pounded so hard he thought it might break. What was it? He whispered. Jonah opened his mouth. The shadow moved instantly, a rush of darkness bending the alley inward, walls shaking, ground splintering, air tightening like a fist. Do not speak it. Elias stood, fury igniting like fire in his chest. You don't get to decide who I am. The shadow's surface rippled violently. You belong to what you left behind, not to what you pretend to be. Mara stepped in front of Elias. You're wrong, she said quietly. He belongs to whoever he chooses. The shadow leaned closer. Then choose. Jonah clutched Elias's sleeve. You have to take it back. The beginning, before it finishes rewriting you. The alley shook violently. The membrane behind Jonah split open again, revealing a chasm of shifting architecture, rooms spiraling inward, corridors collapsing, the lower city tearing itself apart to prevent what was coming. Elias closed his eyes. He reached inward, not for Elias, for the sound buried beneath it, for the syllables he had whispered to Jonah decades ago, For the beginning he had abandoned when the city spoke first. For the truth of who he had been before the city chose him. He found something. A shape, a weight, a sound curled in the back of his memory, like a fossil waiting to be unearthed. Jonah whispered, "Say it. Say who you were." The shadow stretched its arms wide. "If you speak it, you become it. If you don't, you are mine." Elias inhaled and said, "My name was—" The alley exploded. Lights shattered. Walls collapsed. The city screamed. Jonah was thrown backward. Mara vanished into the dark. Elias felt the memory tear open inside him, and the first sound of his forgotten name finally escaped his throat. Chapter 31. The sound that breaks the silence. He woke to darkness. Heavy, breathing darkness. Not the kind that simply filled a space, but the kind that belonged to a space. A darkness with weight, with structure, with memory. Elias opened his eyes slowly, but the dark did not retreat. It wrapped around him, warm at the edges, cold at the center, like a blanket left too long in a forgotten room. He pushed himself upright. His palms met a surface that felt like stone at first, then like fabric, then like skin. He flinched back, breath catching in his throat. Not again, he thought. Not another trick. Not another memory turned into a room. He blinked into the blackness, waiting for his eyes to adjust. They didn't. Instead, something else did. A faint glow began to bloom above him. Soft, milky, diffused, like light reflected through water. It revealed a wide chamber with no corners, no angles. The walls curved gently, as if molded from something pliable, and the ceiling pulsed with slow, rhythmic light. He wasn't in an alley. He wasn't in a memory. He was somewhere deeper, somewhere the city had not shown him until now. "Jonah," he whispered. His voice carried only a few feet before being swallowed, absorbed instantly. The chamber inhaled at the sound, expanding slightly, as though tasting it. Elias shivered. The last thing he remembered was the shock wave, the explosion of light, his forgotten name rising inside him like something that had been trapped for decades. He had felt Jonah's fingers slipping from his arm. He had heard Mara calling his name as she was thrown backward into the dark. And the shadow had leaned close, as if listening. He touched his throat. It felt sore, raw, as if he had spoken something that scraped on the way out. The chamber pulsed again. At the far end, a faint outline appeared, a doorway, or the suggestion of one, shifting between open and closed with each breath the chamber took. Elias rose unsteadily. His legs trembled, but he forced himself forward. Each step made the floor ripple under his feet, like fabric stretched over a hollow shape. Halfway across the chamber, he stopped. A voice whispered behind him, "Elias." He spun around. No one, nothing, yet the air carried the echo of someone standing very close only moments before. He steadied his breathing and forced himself forward again. When he reached the doorway, he saw that it didn't lead into another corridor or room. It led into a memory. His memory, a hospital corridor, blurred at the edges, washed out like a photograph left in the sun. The scent of antiseptic and the distant hum of machines drifted through the opening. Someone was crying. Someone small. A boy. Elias felt his chest tighten. He remembered this. He remembered being here. He remembered the fear. The cold. The moment he stopped being whatever he had been before. He stepped through. The corridor brightened as he entered, solidifying around him. The walls sharpened. The light steadied. The distant cry grew clearer. He walked slowly. Every step tugged at something deep inside him, some ligament of memory pulling taut. He recognized the room numbers, though he shouldn't. He recognized the sound of the child crying, though he could not remember ever hearing himself cry. He stopped outside a door halfway down the hall. The crying was coming from inside. He reached for the handle. It turned before he touched it. The door drifted open, revealing a small room with a bed in the center. A nurse's jacket hung over the back of a chair. Toys lay scattered on the floor. And on the bed, Elias exhaled sharply. A small boy sat curled at the head of the bed, knees pulled to his chest, face buried in his arms. His shoulders shook with silent sobs. He couldn't have been older than 5. Elias approached slowly. The boy looked up, and Elias stopped breathing. It was him, not a fragment, not an echo, not a distortion. Him, before Elias existed. The boy's eyes were a clearer blue, untouched by what the city would someday give him. His hair was darker, his face rounder with baby fat. He was crying so hard his entire body trembled. Elias knelt in front of him, voice trembling. "Hey, it's okay. You're okay." The boy shook his head violently. No. They'll take it if I say it." Elias froze. "Take what?" The boy hugged his knees tighter. "My name." A cold wave washed through Elias's body. He whispered, "You remember it." The boy looked at him through tears, haunted, terrified, too wise for his age. "They told me to forget it," he whispered. "They said if I kept it, it would follow me." "Who?" Elias asked softly. The boy pointed behind Elias. Elias turned. The shadow stood in the doorway, not entering, not advancing, simply watching. Elias stepped in front of the child instinctively, shielding him. "What do you want?" he demanded. The shadow rippled with slow, deliberate recognition. "I want the beginning." Elias clenched his fists. "You can't have it. It was mine first." "No," Elias said, voice steadying. "It was mine. You just got there before everyone else." The shadow leaned closer. "Say it again. Let me hear how it sounds now." Elias felt the forgotten name rise in his throat. Not fully formed, not fully remembered, but present, alive. The boy behind him squirmed, clutching Elias's shirt. "Don't say it," he begged. "If you give the name, it will take the rest." Elias swallowed. "Then what should I do?" The boy whispered, "Say the name for me." Elias blinked. "For you?" The child nodded. "So I can be whole. So you can be whole. You can't fight it if you're only half." Something inside Elias aligned. The truth clicked into place. The shadow wasn't trying to steal his name. It was trying to finish rewriting him. If he gave it the name, it would become the first stone in whatever identity it decided to build. But if he said it for the child, if he gave it not to the city but to the version of himself that needed it, he could reclaim what was stolen. He knelt in front of the boy. "Are you ready?" he whispered. The boy nodded, trembling. The shadow loomed, sensing what was coming. Elias inhaled slowly, reached into the oldest, darkest part of his memory, and spoke. "Your name was—" The lights in the corridor erupted. The boy gasped. The shadow recoiled, and the chamber around him cracked open like a shell splitting under pressure. The name, the true name, finally rose from Elias's chest, ready to reclaim everything the city had tried to consume. Chapter 32. The name that opens the city. The name left his lips like something alive. It did not echo. It did not fade. It did not behave like sound at all. It expanded. A vibration rippled through the hospital corridor, shaking the walls until the paint peeled away in strips. The tiles beneath Elias's knees cracked in a spiderweb pattern, light pouring to the fractures, as if something beneath the floor had been waiting for this exact moment to break through. The child, his younger self, gasped. His eyes widened, glowing faintly as the syllables wrapped around him, settling into his chest like a heartbeat finding its rhythm. He was shaking, but not with fear, with recognition, with completion. Elias felt the effect instantly. The name, his first name, his real name, slid into place inside him like a key turning in a long rusted lock. The corridors of his memory shifted. The missing rooms reappeared. The lost doorways swung open. The oldest shadows dissolved. He was not becoming someone else. He was becoming all of himself. The shadow in the doorway screamed, not with sound, with darkness. It writhed violently, its form tearing at the edges as if the name had scorched a mark into it. Elias rose to his feet, instinctively shielding the child behind him. The shadow staggered backward, retreating, its faceless surface rippling with pain or rage, or both. "You were not meant to remember." Elias stepped forward. "I was meant to survive." The shadow lunged, but the corridor shattered before it reached him. Light erupted from every crack in the tiles, from the seams between the hospital doors, from the thinning air itself. The walls burst outward, breaking the memory apart, hurling the child to one side and Elias to the other. The corridor folded, twisted, then imploded into a single point of blinding white. Elias hit the ground hard. Stone. Cold stone. He opened his eyes. He was back in the lower city, but not where he had been. The chamber around him was enormous, circular, domed, its walls made of shifting layers of memory that flickered like pages flipping too fast to read. Above him, the ceiling pulsed with a slow, golden glow, as if the city's heart was positioned directly overhead. He pushed himself upright. "Jonah?" His voice carried this time, amplified by the chamber, bouncing off the curved walls and returning to him layered, like echoes of himself answering back. He took a step. "Jonah!" A door appeared in the stone, not grown, not formed, not twisted into existence. Simply there, as if it had always been part of the wall. It pushed open, and Jonah stumbled through. Elias ran to him, catching him before he fell. Jonah's body felt more solid than before, less fragmented, his edges no longer flickering. His voice came out in a raw whisper. "You said it, Elias. I heard it." Elias pulled him into a tight embrace. "I'm here. I've got you. I'm not letting go." Jonah clung to him, fingers digging into the fabric of Elias's coat. He was trembling, but not dissolving. His identity had weight again. His presence had shape. The city hadn't consumed him the moment Elias spoke the name. That meant one thing. Jonah was real enough to stay, as long as Elias held him. Jonah pulled back, eyes wide. "But Mara, Elias, I saw her get thrown into the upper corridors. The city scattered her." "We'll get her," Elias said. "But first." A low hum vibrated through the chamber floor. The walls stretched taller. The ceiling expanded, and an enormous vertical seam split open in front of them, revealing a passageway that did not resemble the lower city or the upper alleys. It looked like a spine, a long, impossibly tall corridor lined with ribs of stone and light, curving upward in an arc that seemed to defy gravity. The space inside glowed with a pale, slow-breathing radiance. The air thrummed like an enormous chord struck deep underground. Jonah inhaled sharply. "It's the central artery," he whispered. "The oldest part of the city." Elias frowned. "How do you know?" Jonah's gaze flickered with something almost like shame. "Because I've walked it many times. In dreams. In pieces. In versions of myself that never came back." Elias steadied his brother. "Then this is where we go." Jonah hesitated. "It doesn't lead out." "I know," Elias said, "but it leads deeper." He looked up at the living corridor ahead of them. "And that's where the city keeps what it took." Jonah swallowed. "What you lost." Elias's jaw tightened. "What we lost." The hum intensified, shaking dust from the ceiling. The chamber was changing, adjusting around them, reshaping itself to funnel them toward the corridor. Jonah whispered, "It wants you to finish what you started." Elias nodded slowly. "It wants my name. And if you give it—" "I won't," Elias said. "I'll give it something else." "What?" "The truth." Jonah stared at him, eyes full of fear and something else. Hope, fragile and flickering. Elias turned toward the towering corridor. "Come on," he said softly. "Stay close. And if the city tries to speak, don't answer." Jonah nodded, gripping Elias's sleeve. They stepped into the corridor. The ribs of stone closed behind them one by one, sealing the entrance. The city inhaled, and as Elias led his brother forward, the walls whispered the same sentence over and over. Too quiet for Jonah to hear, but not too quiet for Elias. "You are the only one who ever returned with a name." Chapter 33. The artery that remembers the first ones. The corridor did not behave like a corridor. It breathed. Each rib of stone expanded and contracted with slow, deliberate rhythm, as if the entire structure was a lung pulling them deeper with every inhalation. The floor beneath Elias's shoes was warm, almost pulsing, like walking across the surface of something enormous that lived far beneath. Jonah kept close to him, one hand tangled in Elias's sleeve like a child afraid to lose his parent in a crowd. He wasn't flickering anymore, not truly, but his outlines shimmered from time to time, especially when the corridor lights dimmed. It gave the impression that the city was still considering him, still weighing whether he belonged. They walked in silence for several minutes. The echo of their footsteps was wrong, delayed, stretched, as if the corridor was replaying each sound twice, once for them and once for itself. Shadows clung to their ankles as they moved. Light drifted along the ceiling like slow-moving currents under deep water. Jonah broke the silence first. "What does it feel like?" he asked. Elias glanced sideways. "What do you mean?" "Your name," Jonah said softly. "The real one, now that you remember it." Elias hesitated. "It feels anchored," he said, "like part of my mind stopped floating." Jonah nodded, but his expression tightened with something unspoken. "What?" Elias asked. Jonah's voice dropped. "Then the city knows it too." A tremor rippled through the corridor floor. They both froze. The ribs of the artery tightened slightly, narrowing the passage as if acknowledging them. A soft whisper slid along the walls, quiet but unmistakable. "He remembers. He remembers. He remembers." Jonah flinched. "It's spreading the message." Elias gripped his brother's arm. "Let it. It doesn't change anything." "Yes, it does," Jonah said, eyes widening. "It means it's preparing." "For what?" Jonah stared down the long corridor, his expression dimming. "For you." Before Elias could respond, the light overhead flickered, brightening sharply at the far end of the passage. A shape moved within the glow, a ripple, a silhouette too blurred to identify. Jonah tensed. "Is that—" "No," Elias said immediately. "It's not Mara, but it's someone." "Yes," Elias agreed quietly. "Someone." They continued. The artery widened gradually, the breathing walls stretching outward. The light deepened to a golden hue, brighter than anything they had seen elsewhere in the city. The sound changed, too. Less whisper, more thrum, like many voices humming a single endless note. Halfway down the widening corridor, Elias stopped. "Mara," he whispered. Jonah looked up sharply. "You hear her?" A faint voice drifted from somewhere ahead. Not an echo, not a whisper, but a call. "Elias." It was her voice, but stretched, distant, as if dragging itself through layers of memory. Jonah squeezed Elias's hand. "She's trapped somewhere in here." Elias nodded. "Or she's being shown to us." They pressed forward. The artery opened into a vast chamber, an interior valley of stone, curving downward like a basin carved into the living architecture of the city. And there, suspended in midair above the basin's center, was a figure, not standing, not floating, hanging, held in place by threads of golden light, stretching from the walls like veins converging on a heart. "Mara." Elias ran forward, Jonah close behind. As they neared the edge of the basin, the threads brightened, tightening around Mara's arms, spine, and head like strands pulling her thoughts apart. Her eyes were open, but she wasn't looking at them. She was looking through them, into something deeper. "Mara!" Elias shouted. No movement. Jonah stepped beside him, staring in horror. "It's mapping her." "Mara!" Elias yelled again, louder. This time her eyes shifted, barely, as if turning her gaze required monumental effort. Her lips parted. "Elias." The voice was hers, but doubled. One layer speaking from her physical body, another speaking from somewhere far below. Elias tried to step into the basin. The floor cracked instantly beneath him. A warning. Jonah grabbed his arm. "It's the extraction basin." "The what?" Jonah swallowed. "Where it pulls out the parts of someone it wants to keep." Elias stared at the threads of light. "It's taking her memory?" Jonah shook his head. "Not memory. Identity." Elias's stomach dropped. "Mara," he called again. "Mara, look at me." She tried. Her eyes drifted toward him, then flickered, dimmed, and refocused. "Elias," she whispered. "It's showing me everything." "What do you see?" "Paths," she murmured. "Versions. Doors that never opened. Rooms I used to dream about. Rooms I never entered. Rooms where I died. Rooms where I never existed." Jonah's face tightened with fear. "Elias, we have to get her down." "How?" Elias demanded. Jonah pointed toward the far side of the basin. A tall, narrow doorway pulsed with golden light. A door shaped like an old archway, but shifting at the edges as if still deciding its form. "That door," Jonah said. "It leads to the convergent spine." "And what's that?" Jonah took a breath. "The place where the city keeps the names it hasn't decided what to do with." Elias's blood ran cold. "You mean—" Jonah nodded. "Your name. Mara's name. My name." Elias clenched his jaw. "Then that's where we go." Jonah hesitated. "Elias, if we go in there, the city will show us the versions of ourselves it thinks are the strongest. Then we'll ignore them. Not if they're better." Elias turned sharply. "I don't want a better version. I want the real one." Jonah exhaled, shaken. "Most people don't." Before Elias could respond, Mara gasped, her body arching as the golden threads tightened. Elias grabbed Jonah's hand again. "We're going," he said. Together they stepped toward the golden archway. The city inhaled. The walls dimmed. And as they crossed the threshold, Elias heard a whisper drip behind them. Mara's voice, faint but unmistakable. "Don't trust a version of him that smiles." Jonah froze. Elias turned to him. "Jonah, what does that mean?" Jonah's expression changed. Fear, recognition, disbelief, all folding into each other. He whispered, "It means we're not alone in there." The archway closed behind them, and the convergent spine swallowed them whole. Chapter 34. The versions that wait in the dark. The convergent spine did not have walls. It had silhouettes. Hundreds, thousands, some faint as pencil marks, others sharp as cut glass, all lining the endless corridor like echoes waiting to be spoken. Elias and Jonah stepped in cautiously, the air tightening around them at once. The corridor itself was tall, impossibly narrow at the top, widening downward as though carved from the inside of massive, brittle bone. The floor shimmered beneath their feet, mirroring reflections that did not match their movements. Jonah swallowed. "It's colder here." Elias nodded, like we stepped into a place that forgot what warmth is. For a long moment, they simply stood there, letting their eyes adjust to the strange, dim radiance that pulsed through the silhouettes along the walls. Some figures were frozen in mid-stride. Others leaned against a stone. Some sat with heads bowed as if mourning. Others stared straight ahead. None of them breathed. None of them blinked. Yet each one felt aware. Jonah tugged lightly at Elias's sleeve. "Look." He pointed toward a cluster of silhouettes close to the entrance. Elias approached slowly. The figures sharpened as he neared. Tall, lean outlines, his shape unmistakably his, but not aligned. One held his head slightly higher, shoulders straighter, posture more confident. Another hunched deeply, shaking faintly as if on the verge of collapse. A third stood perfectly still, hands folded behind his back, posture military stiff. Jonah whispered, "These are you?" Elias backed away instinctively. "They're not me," he said quietly. "They're possibilities." Jonah's eyes drifted along the corridor. "All the ways you could have become. All the ways you almost did." Elias stared at the silhouettes. "Why show me these?" Jonah answered softly, "Because the city wants you to choose one." Before Elias could respond, a voice drifted from farther down the spine. "Don't choose the weak one." Elias froze. The voice was his own, but older, smoother, carrying a confidence he had never possessed. Jonah stiffened. "Elias, there's someone coming." Elias turned. A silhouette detached itself from the wall. At first it was only a darker shadow among shadows, but as it stepped into the faint light, the features sharpened. Elias inhaled sharply. It was him. Not similar, not approximate, not a version in the abstract. Elias, but taller, sharper, composed. Eyes calm, steady, penetrating. Hair neatly kept. Presence unmistakable. A version of him that had never broken, never run, never lost anything. A version the city had kept pristine. Jonah whispered, voice trembling, "Elias, that's the smiling one." The version stepped closer and smiled. Not wide, not menacing. Worse, warm, knowing, confident in a way that made Elias's stomach twist. Finally, the version said softly, "You're here." Jonah pulled Elias one step back. What do you want? The version didn't even look at Jonah. I want what he should have been, it said, gesturing to Elias with a small, graceful motion. I want what he was meant to become before he ran. Elias clenched his jaw. I didn't run. I was a child. The version tilted his head. And I didn't run. That's the difference. Jonah stepped in front of Elias. You're just a memory fragment. No, the version said. I'm the piece the city didn't want to lose. Its smile widened slightly. I'm the Elias who never fractured. Elias felt anger rise in his chest. I'm not here to debate versions of myself. That's exactly why you're here, the version replied. To choose the one who leaves. The city cannot let all of us go. Only the one who fits. Jonah whispered, Don't listen. It's trying to destabilize your identity. But the version continued, stepping closer. Do you know what he dreams of, Jonah? The version asked pleasantly. Stability, strength, clarity, a life where he doesn't wake up afraid, a life where he remembers everything, a life where he doesn't carry guilt like a shroud. Stop, Elias said. The version ignored him. Jonah, it said softly, you deserve a brother who doesn't break. Jonah flinched. Elias stepped forward sharply. Enough. The version smiled wider. See? That's it. That's the version the city wants. The one who protects without collapsing. The one who remembers without being swallowed. The one whose name, real or otherwise, never weakens. I'm not choosing you, Elias said coldly. You don't have to, the version replied, stepping so close their reflections nearly overlapped. The city will choose for you. At that moment, the silhouettes along the walls began to move, heads turning, postures straightening, figures leaning forward as if awakening from a long sleep. Dozens of Eliases, hundreds, every version he could have been, every version the city had kept. The entire spine seemed to breathe at once. Jonah whispered, terrified, Elias, they're watching you. Elias stood tall. I'm not giving my name to any of you. The version's smile faded slightly. We don't want your name. Its eyes gleamed with a cold, quiet hunger. We want your place. Jonah grabbed Elias's arm. We have to move. Elias didn't look away from a version. Where's the spine lead? The version answered calmly, almost kindly, to the sender, where the city keeps the first names, the oldest names, the names that built this place. It took one slow, deliberate step forward. You're going there whether you want to or not. Jonah pulled Elias backward. We need another path. There is no other path, the version replied. Not for you. Elias felt a cold realization settle in his chest. The spine wasn't just a place. It was a test, a room full of judges, versions that wanted to replace him. He took Jonah's hand. We're going, he said. Jonah nodded. They stepped backward into the dark. Every silhouette in the spine turned with them. The version of Elias, the smiling one, watched without chasing. But its final words followed them into the darkness. Be careful, Jonah. Not every Elias who reaches the center comes back the same. The corridor behind them sealed, and the next chamber opened. Chapter 35. The room that tests the bond. The chamber did not open like a normal door. It peeled back, layers of stone folding outward, as if something alive were stretching after a long sleep. Elias and Jonah stepped inside cautiously, and the opening sealed behind them with a slow, deliberate exhale. The silence that followed was so complete it felt engineered, as if the chamber itself had stripped sound out of the air. Jonah swallowed. Where are we now? Elias looked around. The room was circular, wide, and unervingly clean. The floor was polished black stone that reflected them imperfectly, their reflections delayed by a fraction of a second. The walls were smooth and pale, without seams or markings, without the breathing rib-like structures of the previous corridor. It felt artificial, too controlled, too quiet. Something's wrong, Jonah whispered. It's quiet, Elias replied. Too quiet. They walked deeper into the chamber. As they moved, the reflections beneath their feet didn't follow. They anticipated. Elias would lift a foot, and the reflection would take a step slightly before he did, then correct itself. He ignored it. The reflections were less dangerous than the places where the city whispered. At the center of the room stood a single object, a wooden chair, plain, unremarkable, facing nothing at all. Elias felt Jonah stop beside him. "That can't be good," Jonah muttered. "It's never good when it looks simple," Elias replied. He approached slowly. As he drew nearer, the air grew sharper, as if the chamber were focusing on him. Jonah suddenly clutched his head in pain. "Elias, stop. Something in here is pulling." Elias turned instantly, guiding Jonah backward. Jonah's outline shimmered briefly, like his identity had slipped half an inch out of alignment before locking back into place. "Don't look at the chair," Elias said. "I'm not," Jonah whispered, "but it's looking at us." The chair scraped the floor. Elias spun toward it. It had turned to face him, waiting. A voice drifted through the chamber, not loud, not soft, something in between. "Sit." Jonah tensed. "Don't." The voice came again, from everywhere at once. "Sit, and the city will show you the truth of your bond." Jonah stepped in front of Elias. "If you sit in that thing, I'm sitting with you." Another whisper swept across the room. "Only one sits. Only one sees." Jonah turned to him, fear tightening every line of his face. "This is a trap." "I know," Elias said, before they could even take a step away. The floor beneath Jonah erupted with a column of blazing light. It lifted him off the ground and hurled him backward into the wall. Elias shouted and ran to him immediately. Jonah tried to rise but collapsed again, breath ragged. His limbs trembled, not in pain, but as if the idea of his body were struggling to stay aligned with its reality. "I can't move," Jonah whispered. Elias held him firmly. "Stay with me." The chair scraped again, louder this time. Elias turned. It had angled itself perfectly toward him. Jonah strained to speak. "Don't do it. Don't sit. Elias, please." Elias stood slowly. "I know." He walked to the chair. The air thickened around him, buzzing like a current building toward discharge. The chair trembled faintly, like a heartbeat inside would. Jonah's voice broke behind him. "It's going to judge you against them, the other versions. Elias, please, don't let it tell you who you're supposed to be." Elias stopped behind the chair. "I don't care about versions," he said softly. "I care about one thing." "What thing?" Jonah whispered. "That I'm your brother." Jonah let out a broken sound, a half-gasp, half-laugh choked by fear. "You've always been enough for me." The chair pulse stilled, as if recognizing the truth in Jonah's voice. Elias exhaled, then sat. The chamber vanished. Instantly, he stood in a narrow hallway lit by a flickering bulb, a place he knew immediately, the hallway outside Jonah's room, the house where they grew up. Elias turned slowly. At the end of the hall, a 16-year-old Jonah cried openly, shoulders heaving. In front of him stood 17-year-old Elias, face tight with anger he didn't understand, fear he couldn't name. "You left me," younger Jonah sobbed. Elias's heart clenched so violently he almost doubled over. His younger self spat back. "I didn't leave you. I needed air. I needed space." "You left me," Jonah repeated. "You always leave when I need you." Elias whispered. "No, that's not how it was." But the scene sharpened, replaying the moment with all nuance removed. Only the wound remained. Jonah's voice echoed through the hall. "You left me." The city whispered with him. "He leaves. He leaves. He leaves." Elias pressed his palms to his temples. "Stop. That isn't the truth." The house collapsed inward. A second memory unfurled. Jonah at the door of the night he disappeared. "Don't try to find me," Jonah had said then, his voice trembling, and Elias had answered, "I won't." Hearing it again was like being struck. The city whispered, "He leaves." "No," Elias said, shaking. "You asked me not to follow. You were trying to protect me. I didn't understand." A voice cut through the collapsing house. "Elias, don't listen." He looked up. The real Jonah, older, trembling, stood just beyond the edge of the memory, leaning heavily against the dissolving wall. His face was pale but determined. "I never wanted you to follow me," Jonah whispered, "because I knew the city would take you too." Elias's heart cracked open. Jonah stepped closer. "You didn't leave me. I left you." The memory fractured like thin ice. The hallway splintered. The walls folded. The house dissolved into dust. The chamber reappeared. Elias was back in the chair. Jonah lay on the floor, breathing hard but conscious. The city whispered once, weaker now. "The bond holds. He cannot replace you." The chamber doors unlocked. Elias ran to Jonah, helping him upright. Jonah leaned into him. "Did you see it?" "Yes," Elias said, "and it didn't break." Jonah nodded weakly. "Then we go on." The floor trembled beneath him, angry, unsatisfied, but the path forward opened, and the next chamber awaited. Chapter 36. The Crucible of Borrowed Faces. The next corridor did not appear so much as assemble itself. Stone folded downward from the ceiling like pages falling from an invisible book, shaping an archway that pulsed with faint amber light. The air thickened, warm, and metallic, like the breath of some enormous machine running just out of sight. Elias and Jonah stepped through, one steady, one shaking, both bracing for what waited. The corridor behind them sealed immediately, trapping them in a dim passage that sloped downward in a long, slow arc. The walls were uneven, ribbed with layered plates of stone that shifted subtly, as though adjusting themselves to the shape of the travelers moving through. Jonah held Elias's arm more tightly than before. "My head feels strange," Jonah murmured. Elias slowed. "How strange? Like something is trying—" Jonah pressed a hand to his temple, eyes squeezing shut, trying to decide what version of me it wants. Elias steadied him. "Stay with the version that hears me." Jonah nodded, breathing hard. "I'm trying." The walls inhaled. A low ribbon of golden light began to appear along the floor, leading them downward. Elias followed it, keeping Jonah close, never letting go of his sleeve. The corridor twisted sharply to the left before widening into a huge chamber that bloomed open like a stone flower. They stopped at the threshold. The room was vast, circular like the previous ones, but broader, deeper, echoing with slow, resonant hum that vibrated at the base of Elias's skull. The ceiling rose high above, disappearing into layers of shifting shadow. But it was the floor that captured their breath. A mosaic formed from thousands of fragments, faces, half-faces, incomplete silhouettes, embedded into the stone like fossils. Some were detailed, crisp, unmistakable. Others were smudged, distorted, blurred into anonymity. Jonah clutched Elias's coat. "This is where it keeps them." "Keeps who?" Elias whispered. Jonah's voice trembled. "The people it almost made." A sound rippled across the chamber. Not footsteps, not a whisper, a stirring, like breath stirring through many mouths at once. Elias scanned the room cautiously. Nothing moved until something did. At the center of the chamber rested a pedestal made of etched stone. Hovering above it, suspended in a thin column of golden light, was a sphere of shimmering translucence. Not solid, not liquid, something in between. Jonah inhaled sharply. "That's a memory crucible." "A what?" "It's where the city melts identities that didn't hold, versions it wants to recycle." Elias's stomach tightened. "Has it taken pieces of you?" Jonah didn't answer. That was answer enough. The sphere flickered. A face formed inside it. Elias's face. Not exactly, but close enough to make his breath catch. Then it dissolved, the features running like ink poured into water. Jonah grabbed Elias's hand. "It's showing what it wants to try next." Lights flared. 3 shapes stepped out of the mosaic floor. Elias staggered back, pulling Jonah behind him as 3 versions of himself. Not silhouettes, not shadows, but fully formed, breathing, moving beings, emerged in the stone as if pulled directly from memory. One version was taller, dressed in dark clothes that fit cleanly, eyes sharp and calm, the smiling one from the spine. Another was younger, bruised at the edges, trembling, wearing the fear Elias remembered from nights he never talked about. The third was older-looking, worn, stooped, face lined with regret. The version of him who never reclaimed his name. Jonah whispered, horrified. It's not just showing you, it's giving them bodies. The smiling version stepped forward first, hands loose at his sides. Elias, he said gently, you don't belong here. I'm not discussing that with you, Elias replied. You don't have to. The version's smile widened. I'm here to take your place. Jonah stepped in front of Elias immediately, voice cracking. You're not him. You're not even close. The confident version tilted his head. Perhaps, but the city believes otherwise. The younger version approached next, eyes wide, haunted, the weight of childhood clinging to every movement. He reached out toward Jonah. You promised me you'd never leave, he whispered. Jonah recoiled as it burned. Elias, no, that's not him. The older, broken version stepped behind Elias, voice low and rasped. You can stop fighting. You don't win. You never win. You become me. Elias clenched his fists. Jonah's breathing accelerated. Elias, be careful. They're not illusions. The crucible can make them real enough to take your place if you let them. Elias's pulse hammered. Then we don't let them. The smiling version stepped closer. Why cling to what you were, he asked softly. When the city is offering what you could be? Elias took a breath, grounding himself. Because what I could be without choice isn't better. It's just clean. Jonah whispered. Elias, the crucible is listening. The smiling version smiled deeper. Good. Then let it hear. He extended his hand toward Jonah. Jonah stepped back instantly, panic flashing across his face. Elias moved in front of him, blocking the version. Don't touch him. The smiling version tilted his head. Why not? I'm you, and I would protect him so much better than you ever have. Jonah's voice shook. Don't listen to him. The younger version crawled across the mosaic floor, eyes fixed on Jonah. Why did you leave me? He cried. Why did you run? Why didn't you save me? Jonah shook violently, unable to look away. Elias, help me? Elias reached for him, but the older broken version grabbed Elias's shoulder with startling strength. Stop fighting, it growled. You know who you become. You know the truth. You break. You always break. Get off me, Elias hissed, tearing himself free. His voice echoed to the chamber, and the crucible sphere flickered at the sound, as if drawn to the rawness in it. The smiling version chuckled. You feel it, don't you? The city wants you closer, wants to see which one of us is worth keeping. Elias stepped forward. No. All three versions froze. Jonah's breath caught. Elias's voice deepened, steady, anchoring the name he had reclaimed. I'm not choosing any of you. The smiling version's smile vanished. You don't have a choice. I do, Elias said. I choose what's real. He moved to Jonah, pulling him upright, holding him tight. I choose us. The chamber trembled. The crucible sphere flared. And one by one, the three versions began to tear. Faces cracking, forms dissolving, bodies folding back into the mosaic floor like shattered reflections being swept away. The smiling one screamed, his voice no longer Elias's, no longer human. The younger one cried, don't leave, as he crumbled into dust. The older one whispered, you'll regret. But then he was gone. Silence fell. Jonah collapsed against Elias's chest, sobbing into his coat. Elias held him until the chamber stilled completely. At last Jonah whispered, voice cracked thin, you chose me. Elias tightened his hold. I always will. The pedestal at the center of the chamber split open. A staircase spiraled downward into a deeper darkness, lit by a faint silver glow. Jonah wiped his face. Where does it lead? Elias looked down the steps. To the center of the city, he whispered, to what it kept from me. Chapter 37. The Stairwell of Names. The staircase descended in a slow, spiraling curve carved from stone so pale it looked almost translucent. Each step hummed under Elias's weight, vibrating with a low, steady rhythm that felt less like sound and more like a pulse. Jonah followed close behind, one hand gripping the rail that wasn't really a rail, just a smooth ribbon of stone that seemed to warm under his touch. They descended in silence for several minutes. The air grew cooler, denser, carrying a faint scent of something metallic, like the breath of an engine buried far below the earth. The walls were carved with faint impressions, shapes that might have been letters or symbols or faces, but every time Elias tried to focus on one, it blurred, shifting before his eyes. Jonah finally broke the silence. "Elias, do you hear that?" Elias stopped. He listened. A faint chorus vibrated up the stairwell, soft, indistinct, as if several voices whispered in overlapping layers from far below. Not words yet, more like murmurs. Breaths. Fragments. Elias nodded. "Names." Jonah swallowed. "Are they ours?" Elias didn't answer. He didn't need to. They both knew whose names the city kept closest. They continued downward. The light around them dimmed into a deeper hue. Neither gold nor shadow. Something between. A color that felt familiar without belonging to anything in the real world. The hum grew louder. The steps widened, flattening into a broad landing where the air rippled faintly, like heat rising from a surface that wasn't hot. Jonah hesitated as their reflections appeared on the polished floor. Not quite accurate. Not quite synchronous. Their outlines bending slightly at the edges as if pulled toward the center of the stairwell. Jonah stepped closer to Elias. "It's changing our shadows." Elias watched the distortions. "It's testing what we are before we go deeper." Jonah's voice tightened. "Will it accept us?" Elias didn't respond. Not because he didn't want to, but because he wasn't sure the truth would soothe Jonah's fear. The landing narrowed again, descending into a final spiral that opened suddenly into the largest chamber they had seen yet. Elias stopped at the threshold. Jonah nearly walked into him. The chamber stretched outward in every direction, dome-shaped and colossal, its ceiling lost in shifting layers of darkness and faint, drifting light. The walls pulsed with moving patterns, strands of illumination that twisted like veins or written lines, forming and dissolving in slow, rhythmic cycles. But it was the center of the chamber that stole their breath. A massive column of light, silver-white, fluid, alive, rose from the floor, stretching all the way up into the unseen ceiling. It wasn't a solid beam, but a vortex, swirling with fragments of shapes, words, memories, an unending spiral of half-formed identities. And within the vortex, Elias saw it, his name, not written, not spoken, not literal, felt, a resonance, a pressure, a note that belonged to him and no one else. Jonah stepped closer to him, breath trembling. "Elias, this is a heart." Elias nodded. "The place where the city keeps what it steals. And what it never gives back," Jonah whispered. A low vibration rolled through the chamber, deeper and heavier than before. The light spiraled faster, and a faint distortion formed within it, like a figure trying to solidify. Jonah grabbed Elias's sleeve. "Someone's inside." Elias focused. A silhouette was taking shape. Tall, familiar, too familiar. Jonah's pulse spiked. "Is that—" "It's not me," Elias said. The silhouette leaned forward in the vortex, face half visible, eyes bright with an intelligence that did not belong to a memory fragment. Jonah whispered, terrified. "Then what is it?" The figure smiled, subtle, wrong, too smooth. Elias's stomach clenched. "It's the smiling one," he breathed. "It followed us." The vortex roared in response, recognizing him, accepting him, pulling him in as if it had been waiting for this version all along. The smiling replica stepped out of the light, fully formed now, no longer a version of Elias, but something refined, sharpened, built from him but perfected for the city's purposes. Jonah backed up 2 steps. "Elias, that thing shouldn't exist outside the spine. It exists because the city wants to see which one deserved the name," the replica said calmly. "And it's not you." Elias stepped forward, jaw tight. "You're not real. I'm more real than the pieces of you scattered across this place," the smiling version replied. "I am what you were meant to become, and the city agrees." Jonah raised his voice, cracking with anger. "You're nothing but a construct. You don't get to decide who he is." The replica ignored him, focusing solely on Elias. "You reclaimed your name," it said softly, "but you haven't earned it." Elias clenched his fists. "My name isn't yours to measure." "Oh, Elias," the replica murmured. Everything here exists to measure you. The column of light pulsed violently, sending ripples of raw memory through the chamber. Elias felt his knees weaken as pieces of his childhood flashed in front of him. Rooms, faces, shouts, shadows, strung together like threads pulled too tight. Jonah stumbled, nearly collapsing. Elias, it's pulling on you. It's pulling on both of us. The replica stepped closer. The city wants resolution. One Elias leaves. One identity stabilizes. One version earns a name. I already earned it, Elias said. No, the smiling version whispered. You survived it. The chamber shook, stone groaning, light surging, the vortex widening. Jonah screamed as a wave of pressure hit him, forcing him to his knees. Elias grabbed him instantly. Jonah, stay with me. Jonah clung to him, voice breaking. Elias, it's taking pieces of me again. That was enough. Elias stood, anger rising through him like a shock of heat. You want to test? He shouted at the replica. Fine, then test this. He stepped directly into the vortex. Jonah gasped. Elias and oh. The smiling version lunged as well, and the column swallowed them both. The city roared, and the chamber collapsed into blinding white. Chapter 38. The vortex where identities break. The light swallowed everything. Not brightness, not glare, but a dense, blinding white that felt like sinking into the center of a collapsing star. Sound vanished. Weight vanished. Even breath became something distant, optional, irrelevant. Elias felt himself suspended in nothingness, a point of thought without body, without skin, without direction. Then the light tilted. Reality reassembled around him. Not a room, not a memory, but a shifting landscape built from threads of identity. Shapes flickered in and out of existence. Corners of familiar rooms. A fragment of his mother's voice. The wooden rail of the childhood staircase. A hospital corridor dissolving at the far edge. The vortex was stitching pieces of him into an impossible collage. A shape materialized a few steps away. The smiling version, perfectly composed, perfectly anchored, unbothered by the storm of memories swirling around them. It regarded Elias with calm interest, as if studying something under glass. You came willingly, the replica said. That makes this easier. Elias steadied himself, feeling the ground under his feet only because the vortex decided to give it to him. This ends now. The replica tilted its head. You think this is a fight? What else would it be? A selection, the version answered simply. The city will keep one of us, the one who holds shape under pressure, the one whose identity does not fracture. A ripple of memories surged between them. Elias at age 9, standing alone in the schoolyard. Elias at 20, staring at a blank page he couldn't bring himself to fill. Elias at 34, trembling the day Jonah disappeared. Each memory twisted, sharpened, made harsher than it had been. The smiling version stepped to the fragments as if they were dust. You cling to pain, it said. It makes you unstable. I lived it, and I improved on it, the replica replied. That is why I am here. Elias felt a shudder in the vortex. A memory of Jonah flickered beside him. 12 years old, clinging to Elias's sleeve during a storm, terrified of being alone. It vanished. The replica spoke again, voice smooth as polished stone. You are too attached to him. Elias's jaw tightened. That's why I'm standing. The replica's eyes gleamed. Attachment fractures identity. It weakens the edges. It made you vulnerable enough for the city to choose Jonah first. Elias's breath caught. You don't get to talk about him. Oh, I do, the version whispered. Because he won't survive too fragmented Elias. Only one of us protects him. Elias stepped closer. He doesn't need a version of me. He needs me. The replica smiled again, that same wrong, poised, confident smile that had haunted the spine. Prove it. The vortex roared around them. Images sharpened into violent clarity. 2 boys in a bedroom lit by winter light. Elias helping Jonah with a school project. Jonah crying after their father slammed the door. Jonah disappearing down a dark alley, whispering, "Don't follow." Elias clutched his head as the vortex forced the memories to play out faster, harsher, louder. The smiling version stood untouched. "This is what you are," it said, "a collection of wounds. A man who survives by accident, not by strength." Elias struggled to his feet, breath shaking. "You're not strength. You're sterilized." The replica blinked. "Interesting. You're a version of me with every weakness removed," Elias said, stepping closer. "But weaknesses are choices. They're things I carry because I live them. Or because you never healed from them. And you think healing is erasing?" "Yes," the replica said simply. "Erasure's clarity." Elias stared at him for a long moment. Then he shook his head. "You're wrong." The vortex pulsed violently. The smiling version walked toward him, unhurried, confident. "That name," it said softly, "the one you claim you've reclaimed. Do you even deserve it?" Elias took a breath. The entire vortex froze. The replica stumbled, almost imperceptibly, but enough for Elias to see the shock ripple across its perfect features. Elias repeated the breath. Slow, deliberate, anchored. "I don't deserve the name because I'm perfect," Elias said. "I deserve it because I survived losing it." The vortex reacted instantly. Light cracked through the space like lightning. The smiling version hissed, its outline flickering. Elias walked forward. "You're what happens when someone tries to become a person without letting anything touch him." The replica snarled, a tiny fracture in its perfect calm. "Jonah needs someone real," Elias said, "not something manufactured to look unbreakable." The vortex tightened around the replica. The smiling version lunged. It moved impossibly fast, reaching Elias in a blink, hand closing around his throat. Elias gasped as the world bled white around the edges. "You break," the version whispered. "That is your truth." Elias's vision darkened, but he heard something. A voice, thin, distant, desperate. "Elias." Jonah's voice. The replica tightened its grip. "He won't reach you." Elias grabbed the version's wrist, forcing his breath steady. "You think he can't reach me?" Elias said, voice cracking. "He's the reason I'm here." He shoved the replica backward with a burst of strength he didn't know he still had. The smiling version staggered, its identity flickering at the edges as the vortex pressed harder against it. Elias rose. "Break me if you want," he said, "but you'll never be what he needs." The vortex agreed. It howled. Waves of light slammed into the replica. Its edges tore. Its face cracked. The perfect smile split down the center. "No!" it screamed, voice distorting. "I am the stronger one. I am the one who holds." Elias spoke over it. "You hold nothing." The vortex exploded. The smiling version disintegrated. Face first, then hands, then voice, shredded into pure static, swallowed by the city it thought it controlled. Silence fell. The light softened. Elias collapsed to his knees, chest heaving, body trembling as gravity returned. A hand touched his shoulder. Warm. Real. "Elias." Jonah whispered, voice breaking. "Elias, please, don't disappear." Elias turned. Jonah was kneeling beside him, eyes wide with fear, hands gripping him as if anchoring him back into existence. "I'm here," Elias whispered. Jonah pulled him into a tight embrace, trembling violently. "I thought it was taking you. I thought you were fading. I couldn't hear you. I couldn't." Elias held him, steadying both their breaths. "I'm not going anywhere." The vortex dimmed into a pillar of soft silver. Not threatening. Not hungry. Waiting. Jonah looked toward it. "What now?" Elias rose slowly, still holding Jonah's hand. "Now," he said, "we take back what's ours." Together, they stepped toward the heart of the city. Chapter 39. The Chamber of Unspoken Names. The center of the city did not resemble a destination. It resembled an ending. Elias and Jonah stepped out of the fading silver glow of the vortex into a chamber so vast and still that their breathing felt intrusive, as though sound itself had no permission to exist here. The ceiling curved high above them, a wide dome of shifting blackness that rippled like a slow ocean suspended overhead. The floor was a uniform plane of gray stone, smooth as water-worn marble, carved with faint spirals that radiated outward from a single pulsing point at the chamber's heart. Jonah tightened his grip on Elias's hand. "This is it." Elias nodded. "The core." "No," Jonah whispered. "The hunger." The distinction hit Elias with a cold clarity. This was not simply the heart of the city. It was a place where it consumed what it took, where identity dissolved into something the city could use. They moved together toward the pulsing point. The closer they drew, the more Elias felt a faint, invisible tug, not on his body nor on his thoughts, but on the deeper architecture of himself, on his name. Jonah faltered. Elias caught him at once. "Jonah," breathed. "Stay with me." "What's happening?" Jonah's jaw clenched. It recognizes me." Elias tightened his grip. "Recognizes you as what?" "For what's missing," Jonah whispered. Before Elias could answer, the floor trembled softly beneath them. The spiral markings lit in a widening sweep, one ring after another, like a fuse catching fire in slow motion. A low hum spread through the chamber, a deep resonance that grew like a chorus assembling far below their feet. Jonah took an involuntary step back. "Elias, something's coming." The center of the chamber split open, not abruptly, deliberately. A razor line widened into an arc. Cold blue-white light spilled out. Elias pulled Jonah close as the opening expanded, revealing not a pit or tunnel, but a well of voices. The sound rose like vapor, thousands of whispers layered over one another, some clear, some broken, some unfinished. Names floated upward, half-formed syllables, breaths shaped into meaning and lost again. Jonah gasped. "Those are—" "I know," Elias said. "Names that had been taken, names that had been forgotten, names waiting for someone to remember them." Among the chaos of whispers, one rose sharply above the rest. Elias Ward. Not Jonah's voice, not the city's whisper. A declaration. Jonah trembled. "Elias is calling you." "Don't answer," Elias said. "Whatever you do, Jonah, do not respond." More whispers rose. "Elias Ward, Elias Ward, Elias Ward." The sound grew into something approaching a chant, the chamber picking up its rhythm, the light from the well thickening as shapes drifted through it. Faces forming and dissolving, hands reaching upward, fragments of people who had never become whole. Then one face solidified, a child, pale, wide-eyed, breathing shallowly. Jonah stiffened. "That's—" Elias tried to block his view. "Jonah, don't." But Jonah couldn't look away. The face was Jonah's, not as he was now, but as he had been at 8 or 9, frightened, exhausted, aching for something he didn't know he'd lost. Jonah whispered, stunned, "That's the version of me it almost kept." The child reached upward. Jonah reached back instinctively. Elias grabbed him. "Jonah!" and "Oh, don't touch him." The child dissolved instantly, scattering into streaks of light. Another shape rose, a silhouette Elias knew too well. Tall, hollow, eyes full of a searching emptiness. Elias's breath tightened. "That's me." But not any version he had fought already. Not the smiling one. Not the broken one. Not the child. It was a version Elias would have become if Jonah never returned. A man without a center, without a past, without an anchor. Jonah grabbed Elias's arm. "Don't focus on it." Elias tried to turn away, but the chamber whispered again. "Elias Ward." Jonah snapped. "Stop calling him." The echo stuttered. The chamber shuddered, and the well of voices collapsed shut in a flash of cold white light. The room dimmed. Silence settled. A new voice broke it. Soft, measured, female. "You've come far, Elias." They turned. A tall figure stood at the far edge of the chamber, emerging from the shifting shadows, as though she had stepped between frames of reality. The nameless woman, still elegant, still impossible to place, still watching them with the patient sadness of someone who had seen this moment too many times before. Jonah instinctively moved closer to Elias. Elias's voice was low. "You knew we'd end up here." She inclined her head. "The city does not reveal its core to those who aren't ready to pay something." Jonah swallowed hard. "Pay what? What does it want?" "Not memory," she said. "Memory is fuel. It burns easily." She stepped closer, eyes steady on Elias. It wants identity. Elias stepped in front of Jonah. We've lost enough. The nameless woman's expression shifted, not cold, not cruel, almost grieving. No, she said quietly. Now comes the debt. The floor pulsed. A shock tore through the room. Jonah doubled over, clutching his chest as his outline flickered, as if someone were pulling on the edges of his existence. Elias, he cried out. Elias seized him. Stop, he shouted at the chamber. Stop touching him. The nameless woman raised a hand, not in threat, but in calm explanation. It is not touching him, she said softly. It is touching you. Elias froze. What? She stepped forward, voice low. Jonah was taken because of you. The city never wanted him. It wanted to fracture inside you, the break made by losing him. Elias shook his head violently. No. Jonah, tell her it's not true. Jonah tried to speak, but pain knifed through him again. The nameless woman continued. You are the debt. Jonah was simply the doorway that let it reach you. Jonah's voice was faint. Elias, don't listen. Elias gripped him tighter. You're not taking him. The nameless woman's eyes softened with something like pity. We're not taking Jonah, she said gently. We're taking what he means to you. Jonah's breath hitched. Elias, and oh. The chamber convulsed, and before Elias could protect it, the city reached into his mind, not for Jonah, but for the memory of who Jonah was to him. Chapter 40. The memory they try to take. Elias felt the strike before he understood it. A violent tug, deep and absolute, pulled at the center of his chest, as if someone had reached directly inside him and grabbed the memory of Jonah, not as an image, not as a voice, but as a meaning. Something primordial, something that came before words. His knees buckled. Jonah tried to hold him up, but his own outline shuddered with the shock, flickering like a reflection on disturbed water. Elias, stay with me. Jonah's voice cracked as he grabbed his brother's shoulders, trying to anchor him in place. The nameless woman stood perfectly still, watching with an expression that bordered on sorrow. Not cruelty, not indifference. Sorrow, as though she had witnessed this moment 100 times. The floor around the brothers rippled outward, spiraling in wide, luminous rings. The chamber darkened, the light dimming into a faint silver sheen, as something deeper awakened beneath the stone. The city, not its architecture, not its tests, its will. Elias felt the pull intensify. His heartbeat lost its rhythm, skipping, stumbling. His breath fractured into short, stuttering bursts. Jonah cupped his face desperately. Look at me. Elias, look at me. Elias forced his eyes open. Jonah's face blurred, doubled, split into versions. Jonah at 10, Jonah at 17, Jonah the night he disappeared, Jonah trembling in the lower city. All versions overlapping, dissolving, reforming. Elias. Jonah whispered, voice small and terrified. Don't let it take me. Elias choked on a breath. It's not taking you. It's taking what you mean. A sharp wave tore through his mind. Instantly, Jonah's face shifted in front of him, not physically. Inside him, emotional gravity loosened. Recognition flickered. Something vital slipped. Jonah saw the change and recoiled as it burned. No, and oh, Elias, don't lose me. Don't lose this. Fight it. The nameless woman stepped closer. Elias, she said gently, you cannot hold on to someone the city has marked for its debt. Elias snapped his glare toward her. You do not decide what I hold. You misunderstand, she said softly. You are not releasing Jonah. You are releasing the part of yourself that believes you cannot exist without him. Her words were a knife. Elias felt the chamber tilt. He grabbed Jonah's coat to steady himself. Jonah held his wrists. Elias, listen to me. I am not your anchor. You're mine. Do you hear me? You're mine. The floor pulsed hard enough to crack. The spirals erupted into shards of cold light that rose from the stone like broken glass suspended in midair. The city whispered through the chamber. He forgets. He forgets. He forgets. Jonah shook him. Elias, no. You don't forget me. Not this. Not us. Elias, fight it. Please. Elias gasped as another wave hit. A pulse so strong it scraped against the memory of Jonah's voice. The core memory trembled, like a candle losing flame. Jonah sensed it. He clutched Elias's face between his hands, his voice barely breath. Say it, Jonah whispered. Say who I am. Elias opened his mouth, and nothing came out. The city whispered louder. He forgets. He forgets. He forgets. Jonah's knees buckled. He pressed his forehead to Elias's. No, please, don't do this. Don't let it win. Elias's chest convulsed. He forced breath into his lungs. I'm trying, he whispered. Jonah, I'm trying. The nameless woman watched with sad resignation. This is not about cruelty. This is balance. Elias shook his head violently. This is theft. No, she said. It is correction. Her words vibrated through the chamber, triggering another violent pulse. Jonah cried out as both brothers were thrown to their knees. Elias grabbed his brother and held him tight, as if physical proximity could shield the fading memory. I won't lose you, Elias whispered fiercely. Jonah shook his head. You're not losing me. You're losing the part of yourself that's still a child, afraid to be alone. The chamber tightened around them, air compressing, light shrinking inward, the spirals contracting toward the center point. Elias felt the memory slipping again. Jonah's face blurred, his name thinned, his meaning dimmed like a star receding. Jonah grabbed Elias with both hands, desperate. Say it, he shouted. Say who I am. Elias forced the words through the tearing pressure. You're my brother. The chamber roared in fury. The nameless woman flinched, as though struck by the declaration. Elias pushed on, voice cracking. You're Jonah. You're my brother. You're... The city struck again. But Elias didn't fall this time. He held Jonah with both arms, locking their foreheads together. You're the person who taught me how to stay, Elias whispered. You're the reason I survived losing myself. You're the reason I remember my name. You're the reason I came here. You're the reason I'm still here. Jonah shook violently in his arms. Elias. And you, Elias whispered, are not a debt. The city convulsed. The spirals of light shattered. The nameless woman staggered backward, eyes wide. Elias, what are you doing? She whispered. He pulled Jonah close, anchoring him with every breath. I'm showing the city, Elias said, what it cannot take. The chamber shook. The city screamed. Jonah clung to him, sobbing, shaking, but very real. And then the pressure snapped, not in violence, in surrender. The chamber fell still. The spirals dimmed. Jonah gasped as the flickering around his outline stopped, his form settling, stabilizing, solid. Elias felt the tug on his identity release. Not fully, but enough. Enough that Jonah's meaning stayed. The nameless woman stared at them in disbelief, something like awe trembling in her voice. No one, she whispered, has ever refused that pull. Elias stood, lifting Jonah with him. We're not done, he said, voice steady, grounded, whole. He looked toward the chamber's far wall, where a new doorway burned open in silent, silver light. Jonah wiped his face, breath catching. Where does that go? Elias tightened his grip on his brother. To what the city never wanted us to find. Chapter 41. The room where the city remembers you. The doorway of silver light did not open outward. It opened inward, pulling the surrounding stone and shadow into itself, stretching them into a narrow path of shimmering brightness. Elias held Jonah's hand as they stepped closer, feeling the air change around them. It grew quieter, but not empty, quiet like a held breath, quiet like something ancient waiting to be acknowledged. Jonah trembled, but did not let go. What do you think is inside? Jonah asked, voice tight. Elias kept his gaze forward. The part the city doesn't show. The part it uses but never reveals. Jonah swallowed. A name? No, Elias whispered. A beginning. They crossed the threshold. A sudden warmth washed over them, not comforting, but intimate, like the heat left in a room after someone has just walked out. The space beyond the doorway was small compared to the vast chamber before it, but the atmosphere was heavier, denser, as if the walls themselves carried a heartbeat. The room was circular, enclosed, lined with smooth stone that glowed faintly from within. No shadows clung to the corners. No cracks broke the surface. It felt untouched by the chaos of the rest of the city, as though this chamber had never fragmented, never warped, as though the city guarded it. In the center stood a pedestal. On the pedestal sat a small, sealed container of obsidian glass, the size of a closed hand, the shape of a memory. Jonah drew closer. "Is that?" Elias stepped beside him. "It feels like something waiting." Jonah looked up. "For who?" Before Elias could answer, the nameless woman entered behind them, not walking, but appearing at the doorway as though she had always been part of the room's background and had simply decided to reveal herself. Her expression was unlike anything they had seen on her face. Not cold, not enigmatic, not sorrowful, fearful. She stopped just inside the threshold, hands clasped tightly in front of her, gaze fixed on the obsidian container. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. Jonah stepped in front of Elias instinctively. "We're done being told what rooms we're allowed to enter." The nameless woman did not look away from the pedestal. "This is not a room meant for choice. This is where the city keeps what it can't destroy." Elias felt a cold weight settle in his chest. "What does that mean?" She finally met his eyes. "It means the city didn't steal your name." Her voice trembled slightly. "It hid it." Jonah grabbed Elias's sleeve. "Why?" "To protect itself," she said. "Because your name isn't just a name. It's a question." Elias blinked. "A question?" She nodded slowly. The city was born from a single question, the first identity fracture, the first moment someone doubted who they were enough to create a place like this. Your name carries that question's echo. Jonah stiffened. "What question?" She hesitated, then answered, "What if the version of you who should have lived didn't?" The floor shivered beneath them. Jonah backed away from the pedestal. That sounds like what the smiling version believed." "No," the nameless woman said quietly. "He believed the opposite. He believed he should have lived. He was created from certainty. But your name, your real name, was born from doubt." Elias stepped toward the pedestal, pulse hammering. "So inside that container is the first fracture," she finished, "the oldest unanswered version of yourself." Jonah whispered, horrified. "You mean the city built itself around him?" "Not him," she corrected softly. Elias swallowed. "What happens if I open it?" The nameless woman's voice dropped into a whisper. "The city will remember you." Jonah tightened his grip on Elias's hand. "That sounds like something we don't want." But Elias felt something else. A pull, not the violent tug of the city trying to take him. A gentler one, an invitation. This felt like gravity returning to a body that had floated too long. He stepped closer. Jonah's voice broke. "Elias, please be careful." Elias touched the obsidian container. It vibrated faintly, recognizing him. A thin crack spread across its surface. Jonah stepped back. "Elias." Before he could finish, the container split open. Light, but not the blinding, violent light of the vortex. A softer, subtler glow rose from the container like breath escaping after being held for years. The light coalesced into a small figure. A child, not Jonah, not Elias, but close to both. A version of Elias of perhaps 5 or 6 years old, standing barefoot, wearing a too large shirt, eyes hollow with a grief that didn't belong to his age. Jonah whispered, voice trembling, "Who is that?" The nameless woman closed her eyes. The one who asked the question. The child looked up at Elias. His voice was thin, exhausted. "Are you me?" Elias felt the world sway around him. "I think so." The child stepped forward, touching Elias's hand with trembling fingers. "Are you the one who lived?" Elias swallowed hard. "Yes." The child nodded slowly. A tear slid down his cheek. "I'm tired," the child whispered. "Can I stop hurting now?" Elias's heart cracked. He knelt, lowering himself to the child's level. "You're not alone anymore," Elias whispered. "I remember you." The child blinked once, twice, and then collapsed into Elias's arms, dissolving into a gentle wave of silver light that sank into Elias's chest like a breath finally taken. The chamber shuddered. The nameless woman stepped backward in fear. Jonah gasped, "Elias, your name." Light spread from Elias's chest, glowing beneath his skin. The city roared, a sound made not of anger, but recognition. Elias closed his eyes, steadying his breath. His name, the true name, rose inside him, full, complete, and finally whole. When Elias opened his eyes again, the chamber was still shaking, the light growing, the walls shifting as though the entire city was rewriting itself around the new truth. Jonah grabbed his arm. "Elias, what's happening?" Elias breathed out slowly. "The city is remembering me." Thank you for listening to part 3 of the audiobook, The Silence Between Names. I hope you are enjoying the story and that you will keep following us. Do not miss the grand finale in the 4th and final part. If you want to discover the next audiobooks here on the Ink Tale, I invite you to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Also, if you would like to give some advice to a young channel or share your thoughts, please leave a comment in the section below. Your support is essential to help us grow and reach other audiobook lovers. Until next time, bye and thank you